Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, striking up the live stream on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. And a special treat tonight is we've got Rick Serritella on the line from the NFL Draft Bible. Want to remind everyone that you can support the channel by grabbing any one of the Amazon links down in the description section of any of the videos and support the channel right there. It doesn't cost you a penny, but just use those Amazon links to do your regular Amazon shopping. Also, you can join us on Patreon, where we will go live for the first time on Friday night. That too at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So join us there on Patreon for an exclusive live stream. And also, if you love the audio instead of the video and want to stay on the move, and you can catch us on audio at Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. And remember, got our little helmet vote going on through April 15th. Vote for the helmet that you would like to see displayed that has yet to reach the set here. We've got 16. So, Rick, we tell people don't vote for the helmets that are already there. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we still get votes for the helmets that are already there.
We need some Rutgers, we need some Rutgers up there.
Well, let's get the votes in. We'll get Rutgers represented if we get the votes. You got to get the votes in. So, again, we've got Rick Serritella for probably 45 to 50 minutes. Maybe we can stretch him out longer than that. We'll see how the schedule runs. Rick is a busy man these days. Rick, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Looking forward to a primetime spot, live Q&A with the voice of college football. What's better than that?
Oh, man, there you go. That's a way to set it up. I love that. Man, I'm going to have you coming in here doing promos for me.
I don't know. Between the primetime spot, the Pressure Sportswear shirt, it's got me hot. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Oh, I know you're ready to rock and roll. Are you, though, Rick, ready to face what is the self-proclaimed best live chat room in college football?
Yeah. I mean, I know your audience is as educated and as smart as they come, so I'm looking forward to taking on the rapid firing squad, and we'll do the best we can here.
All right, Rick, I will start you off soft. You only have to deal with me to get us started. And so Rick joined me about a week ago, and we knocked out some segments. Those are posted, so please check them out. We talked about the news of the day, which at that point was involving the Arizona Cardinals shopping Josh Rosen, and also Ed Oliver's status as a position player, kind of a tweener between defensive end and linebacker. So we talked about that, but we also talked quarterbacks. So we'll move on to the running backs, Rick. Let's get down to the guys that make things happen out of the backfield. It's no one a big surprise to anyone that two of the top backs possibly come straight out of the Alabama stable of running backs, and Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris. And Josh Jacobs, not necessarily a guy that got a whole ton of work until later in his career at Alabama, kind of waited in line. But what does he bring to the table? And kind of run through the running backs as you see them.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama had their pro day yesterday. I think Jacobs was in the 4.25 or 4.52, 4.55 range, so a little bit better than what he was previously. And you know, Damian Harris, to me, he's number one on the NFL Draft Bible big board. I know a lot of people like Jacobs one. For my money, neither one is a first-round running back. I don't have any. I just did a mock draft yesterday up on the site. There's no running backs in the first round there. So, you know, to me, Harris is a more proven runner between the tackles. Bruiser, maybe not as much agility or flash as a Jacobs. The one thing I noticed watching Jacobs is Alabama will tend to use him, you know, not as a gadget player, but a lot of movements, a lot of shifts, a lot of pre-snaps coming, you know, back and forth, and maybe do some more end arounds. I think he's a more versatile guy. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, where Harris is probably, you know, more of a two-down back or rotational guy at the next level. Darrell Henderson from Memphis. I think this guy, you hear the Kareem Hunt comparison a lot, you know, not a speed burner, but has breakaway speed, probably plays more quick than fast. So, you know, I think he's a guy, speaking of the Chiefs, if they're looking for a Kareem Hunt replacement, day two, Darrell Henderson from Memphis, I think, can be an outstanding pick. Devin Singletary from Florida Atlantic was a guy who people viewed very highly at one point, and then didn't run the 40 times that, you know, people expected. So he's maybe in that day two, even day three range. And Evander Elijah Holyfield.
I've done that too.
So, I mean, this was a guy I really liked. And, we talked on the previous episodes about not putting too much stock, not putting too much emphasis in the combine numbers. At the same time, when you look at the track history of running backs who have ran a 4.80, the success rate is not very good in the NFL. So it's going to be tough. He's a big boy. He's hard to bring down, but 4.8 speed at the NFL, I just don't know if that's going to cut it. So, not the glitz and glamour at the running back position. I'll give you one guy I really like a lot from Slippery Rock, Wesley Hills. He's a guy who's dealt with some injuries throughout his career, did extremely well at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, got called up to the Senior Bowl, was not invited to the Combine in Indianapolis. But, boy, I mean, I saw him run over the LSU safety and not think twice about it, and it was impressive. He's got some agility. He's got some size, 6 foot, 220. This is a guy on day 3. And I'll tell you what, I go back to Terrell Davis in the 6th round. This guy, Rodney Anderson, out of Oklahoma. I mean, 3 season-ending injuries. But I'll tell you what, 2 years ago when he stayed healthy, you watch his film, that single season is as good as any year that any running back had in this year's draft class. So for me, if you can be patient till day 3, there's some quality running backs there.
Yeah, they had a running back situation there with Trey Sermon, where Rodney Anderson only got a handful of carries the first 3 or 4 games of the season, and then he packed a season plus worth of productivity into about 11 games for the Sooners, going back to their college football playoff appearance against Georgia. And he ripped up the Bulldogs, even one of the more talented defenses in the nation, in the Rose Bowl that year for the tune of about 200 yards rushing. Benny Snell's a guy that obviously, I bring the collegiate side. You obviously scout what the projection is. Benny Snell is a guy that's a workhorse. There's always a concern about too much wear and tear at the collegiate level before they even step on an NFL field. What are your thoughts about Benny Snell?
I mean, the wear and tear thing, to me, the average NFL career is 2.5 seasons. So, hey, whether you carry the ball 1,000 times, 200 times, I'm not going to put too much stock into that. But Benny Snell, I love his enthusiasm. I love his character, his personality, the way the teammates gravitate towards him, the way that he's a fiery guy, that he can get the team going. He's a spark plug, right? We saw that with Kentucky, best season they've had in quite some time. Now, how does his game translate to the next level? Listen, maybe doesn't have that next level gear, or that breakaway speed, but he's a bulldog. He's going to fight. He's going to gain those extra yardage. He's going to give you all that effort. And I don't think he projects as a starter. He's a guy that comes in, maybe holds down the fort, is a spot-in starter. You've seen Tevin Coleman throughout the years, maybe step in and carry the load when called upon. Maybe not a guy you want to be your RB1, but a guy who can step in and be a capable RB1, a very capable backup, a guy that, maybe sneaks into round 3, but I think more of a round, 4 through 6 projection.
I made the mistake apparently a couple of years ago of leaving David Montgomery out of my top 10 running backs in college football list. And I never knew that there were that many Iowa State fans out there, let alone watching me, because nobody had ever said anything about Iowa State football to me until I left David Montgomery off that list. He's obviously a fun one to watch at that level, but what do you think of him?
This is like a guy that, again, didn't really impress with the measurables at the combine, but that's not what we expected anyway. This is a gamer. This is a guy that, breaks a lot of tackles after contact. He's, maybe a little bit more tougher to bring down. A guy that's going to exceed expectations, maybe taking, I think, day 3 at this point. But I wouldn't be surprised if David Montgomery outperforms a lot of guys taken ahead of him. And you see, I think he was in that 4.6 range, which, it's hard to take a running back of that caliber that, inside the top 100. And I think, a good comparison might be Alfred Morris, who slid down to the 6th round because of that poor 40 time. But at the end of the day, the guy knows how to gain yards. So, I'll take David Montgomery on my team all day long. You tell me day 3, I can have David Montgomery. I love it.
Got 2 other guys for you at the running back position coming out of the Big Ten that didn't have huge careers, but one of them really finished strong after a strong start. a middle to his career at Ohio State that was plagued by some injuries and the emergence of J.K. Dobbins, but then he kicked it back up a notch for his junior season, and that's Mike Weber.
This guy's ready to go. I mean, are you kidding me? I know he didn't even start on his own team, but again, just like the Alabama backfield, I mean, Ohio State's got a talented backfield, so maybe not as many carries, so not as much recognition in the media. But I mean, I don't see, when you turn the film on, see what this guy can do. Not only is he a tough runner, he's also capable of catching the ball out of the backfield, got a little wiggle to him. I mean, this guy, I love a guy that just puts his head down and gains the extra yardage. He's not looking for the sideline. He's not looking to run out of bounds. Mike Weber is a guy that I am very impressed with, and somebody I'm probably more of a fan of Mike Weber than most people. To me, I believe he's in my top 5, 4, or 5th best running back, right behind Travion Williams from Texas A&M, who we haven't spoken about.
Okay, I'm feeling a little bit smarter now. Because I liked Mike Weber as well, and he did have some fumbling issues earlier in his career at Ohio State. And again, he hit the ground running as a freshman, almost had just a couple of yards shy of 1,000 yards. And then J.K. Dobbins kind of stepped in, was the go-to guy, and was the guy that just showed a little bit more explosion. And I really thought Mike Weber must have done something in that injury rehab that really focused on the next level and gaining that burst that he didn't necessarily show earlier in his career. And he cleaned up some of the responsibility in terms of reliability and really showed up in some big games for the Buckeyes the last 2 years. And then Myles Sanders, of course, at Penn State. Saquon Barkley was a complete freak coming out last year. Myles Sanders was actually a much higher rated recruit coming out of high school. And for college football junkies like myself and the people watching, we kind of had to scratch our heads at times, just because it seems like some of these guys come right through. We barely blink an eye. They don't seem like they ever emerge as stars at this level, and they decide to come out and boom, they may get a decent shot to play some significant minutes at the NFL.
Yeah, and Myles Sanders, I mean, I think, talk about a guy who benefited from the combine out there in Indianapolis. To me, he had the most impressive combine performance of any running back. And, you know, I thought there's a guy who significantly increased his draft stock probably a round or two, where, you know, I thought he was a day 3 guy. Now I think he's our 5th rated running back on the NFL Draft Bible Big Board, which puts him right in that, you know, round 3, late round 3, maybe early round 4 range. But, you know, you heard Saquon Barkley last year talk about, hey, this guy could be better than me. He's ready to, when he gets his opportunity to shine, he's going to take advantage of it. And that's what Myles Sanders did. And what a hard act to follow. But you know what? You did just about as good as you can do. It's hard to replicate going number 2 overall, but I thought Myles Sanders, for the limited amount of work and opportunity that he had, he took full advantage of it.
We've got Rick Serritella on the line from the NFL Draft Bible. So please just NFLDraftBible.com. There it is. That's all you need to do to get you set for the NFL Draft. And even though we talk college football here all the time, this is the transition. And I don't know that there's an event. Let me check. No, there's not. There's no event my entire year related to sports or pretty much anything else that's off the field that I look forward to more than the NFL Draft. And, you know, I'm not a guy, Rick, that necessarily preps and gets ready for it. It's kind of like National Signing Day, even though I'm used to growing up with the NFL Draft. I was not a National Signing Day until I really locked in on this. But with the NFL Draft, I'm not a guy that really preps. But once the event's here, you know, I can't miss a minute. I want to see all the analysis. And I guess I think before that, I'm kind of studying for something that may not happen. So I just kind of wait for that Thursday night to kick in. But I know most of you really want to lock in with good information, get ready, and know who you're talking about, and maybe impress some of those folks that you have a cold one with once in a while. So what you do is locked in with the NFLDraftBible.com and Rick Serritella's work there. We ran into Rick on social media quite a few years ago, and I have, really called on him this time of year, each and every year.
Happy
wide receivers, Rick.
Yes.
Man, those pair at Ole Miss are a couple of pretty freakish athletes, DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. I guess we can start there.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because the more I see A.J. Brown, the more I like him, you know, more than DK Metcalf. And I think sometimes you got to trust your gut, go with the film. I had AJ Brown ahead of DK Metcalf, the entire season pretty much. And then, he comes and runs this 4-3-3. And first of all, the picture surfaces on social media, right? And everybody says, is that Photoshopped? Is that real? And then, you hear Gruden at the combine talk on the podium to say, this guy is ripped. Like, who's going to tackle him? And then he runs a 4-3-3 at 233 pounds, I believe. But, you saw at the pro day the other day, a little lead foot coming in and out of his breaks, running routes. I know he does the fly routes and the highlight films, and he gets behind the corners quite often. But to me, AJ Brown, I think, is a little bit more of a polished route runner, a guy that maybe has even more yards after catchability. Maybe DK Metcalf has more of that straight line ability. But for me, you factor in that neck injury equation. I mean, that's a scary thing. And listen, everybody's one hit away in the NFL, but when you have a previous neck injury that's been, fused or surgery on, whatever the procedure was, to me, take the risk factor out of it. Give me AJ Brown all day. I like him more and more as we get closer to the draft. And, my number one guy is Hollywood Brown, which, Marquise Brown did not get a chance to work out. Of course, the Liz Frank, again, you got to be careful now because we saw John Ross a couple years ago, I think similar kind of injury type of thing, and he really hasn't panned out. But when you watch Marquise Brown on film, I mean, I don't know about you, Mark. I see Deshaun Jackson clone. So to me, that's a great value. Maybe not a wide receiver one at the next level, but a guy who could be a dangerous second wideout, a slot wideout. I know we didn't get to see him run a 40. I love his game speed. So to me, Marquise Brown is the top guy, top dog. Then you got guys like Akeem Butler, who's just an athletic freak at 6'4". What is he, 220, running 4.3s, jumping 42 inches. Got the highlight reel, all the play, the splash plays that get you excited. So, Kelvin Harmon from North Carolina State, another big-bodied wide receiver. So if you're looking for those big bodies, I think right at the top of round 2, you're going to have a pretty good selection there. And then this kid out of Texas Tech, Antoine Wesley. I mean, this kid is just really impressive. He's got the NFL Draft Bible scouting department doing backflips in the war room. I mean, we're pounding the table for this kid. And then, Preston Williams, the Colorado State wideout, transfer from Tennessee. You put his film on, it's as good as any wide receiver in the draft. Now, he wasn't allowed to participate at the combine. There's some off-the-field stuff. The pro day wasn't great. A lot of red flags. But you saw Tyreek Hill in the 5th round a couple years ago. Listen, Preston Williams is entirely off teams' boards. But there's going to be a team that rolls the dice and takes a gamble on this kid. And he could quite possibly be the best wideout in the draft.
Yeah, Akeem Butler, Rick, you mentioned all the superlatives, and see, I'm in that camp. And again, it's Iowa State, so I don't see him play every week, but I saw him just tear Oklahoma to shreds the last 2 years. And then in the bowl game against Washington State, he made some just like ridiculous catches. They couldn't cover him. And just to watch this kid play, and then I turn on the NFL Draft Combine, and they're talking about inconsistency.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's probably not as polished as some of these other wideouts we're talking about in the first round, but he can be coached up. The upside is as great, if not greater, than some of these other guys. And I know his trainer down at XPE, Tony Villani, speaks very highly of him there. He's a great work ethic kid, a very coachable athlete, and just explosive is how he's described in one word. But if you take the splash plays like we talk about, I mean, he's made some impressive catches. Him and N'Keal Harry, I mean, are probably two of the more exciting wideouts to watch.
So is there anybody on that wide receiver board that we don't talk about much, at least on the NFL level, that you like a little bit better than most?
Well, I'll give you 2 guys that really impressed me at the Senior Bowl. First off, UMass, Andy Isabella. He's a track star. Now we have a little bit of concern about him being a somewhat of a body catcher, but I mean his 4.3 speed is legit, and he's able to get in and out of breaks, create separation in short area space. I think Andy Isabella is a day 3 weapon, a slot weapon. He's already been linked to the New England Patriots, so go figure. But the one guy I'm in love with, I don't use this word very often, but my man crush. I haven't had one in a long time, but Terry McLaurin from Ohio State. This kid is a gamer. Urban Meyer calls him the hardest working, if not the hardest working player he's ever coached. And that's pretty high praise. But, what I loved about it at the Senior Bowl, he's beating the corners and he's taking Chris Boyd from Texas out to the woodshed. And then he's turning around, letting him know, like, hey, this is why I just beat you on that route. This is what you need to do. He's coaching guys up. He's going to go out, and he's a special teams demon too. So he's going to probably play 10, 15 years in the league. And then after he's done, he's going to go be a coach.
And those Ohio State wide receivers, I don't think they lose their speed. Ted Ginn's like 35 years old and still running guys down and just blazing right by everyone. He just has that extra gear. And Joey Galloway was the same way, sticking around the league for like 14 years. He's still one of the fastest guys around. So I don't know what's going on there.
Oh, it looks like he could still play.
Absolutely. Well, Rick, we got people that are clamoring to make phone calls in. And so we'll go directly to the phone line here.
Oh, let's do it.
It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's DeAndre. How you doing?
Hey, DeAndre. How you doing? I'm doing just fine. I was going to ask Rick about your Pittsburgh Steelers, but you can go directly to him.
Hey, Mr. Rick. How you doing today, sir?
Doing wonderful. How are you?
The Steelers.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, who you looking for there on the tape? I was thinking middle linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they actually, I think in my mock draft, that's what I have them doing. Whether it's Devin White or Devin Bush, I can't remember offhand. I'm going to dig it up right now, but I think those are the two guys that I'm looking at the first round. They clearly have a need there, and Devin Bush and Devin White are the two guys in that first round area that might be on the board when they come up to pick.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
You can get one of those, DeAndre. I'll just let you know. You're going to have to be good to one of those Big Ten linebackers if you draft him. You don't like the Big Ten, but you might have one playing for you.
Well, I like Ryan Shazier, and Clemson lit him up in the Orange Bowl that year, but he's still a good player for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Do you think the Steelers going to be conservative to stay at the position they at, take the best player, or you think they're going to try to move around a little bit?
Well, anytime you move up, you got to give up picks, and I don't think they're in position to do that. So, I think they're going to stay where they are. Trading back at that point, I don't think there's going to be a quarterback worthy enough to trade back or a team wanting to trade up. Maybe there will be, but I think they stay where they are. If they go on the offensive side, I think DK Metcalf, who we just talked about, they got to get over the loss of Antonio Brown. DK Metcalf is a guy that could be there on the board. Talk about that straight line speed. You line him up opposite of Juju Smith-Schuster. Now you got two guys who can stretch the field opposite ends.
There you got it, DeAndre.
I was thinking the Steelers, if they didn't go with one of the linebackers, I was thinking maybe a nose tackle. I mean, I think Hargrove does a good job, but I think that's the middle of the field is the Steelers' problem. The middle linebacker and nose tackle is probably the biggest area of weakness. And receiver, for some reason, the Steelers find receivers everywhere. So I don't think they'll go in the first round for a receiver, even if I think it's a need. Maybe the guy out of South Carolina, Debo Sanders, Samuel, or I like the guy from Ole Miss, too. So that's why I was looking at Pittsburgh, maybe taking later. Or like you said, the receiver out of North Carolina State. I can't think of the guy's name.
Kelvin Harmon.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, listen, I like Debo Samuel a lot. We haven't even had a chance to talk about him. I think, his route running is probably as good as any wideout in this year's draft class. And for me, I'd rather have Deebo Samuel on day 2 than some of these other wide receivers on day 1. So I'm on board with that. You talk about a nose tackle. How about Dexter Lawrence from Clemson? He's a big boy. You could stick him in the middle. I'm actually a fan of Hargrove. I like what he brings to the table. So I'm not sure I would go there round 1, but Lawrence is a guy that could be a possibility if they're looking at that.
All right, DeAndre, we've got a couple other people trying to get on the line. I appreciate you supporting the channel, DeAndre. You're the man. I appreciate everything you do for us, man. Stay in touch.
All right, mate. You take care, Mark.
All righty.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Rick Serritella on the line doing a whole lot of work for us. Join him on the NFL Draft Bible. Of course, the NFL Draft 3 weeks and 1 day away. We've got a few more callers coming on the line. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. This is Anthony.
Anthony, how are you?
Hi. Is Rick on the?
Oh, he's ready to roll. He's listening.
Hey, Rick. I have a question. I'm a Dolphins fan, and what I did one of these draft simulators that allows you to trade down. What I did was I traded down with a team like the Raiders, who has a second first round pick. I drafted Tyler Biadasz from Wisconsin. Then I got 2 second round picks. I drafted his 2 line mates at guard, Indeeder and who is it? Shoot, I forgot. Benshaw. Then in the 3rd round, I drafted David Edwards. What do you think about that to pair up with Tunsil? Do you think reaching a reach to draft Biadasz in the 1st round, or no? Do you trust these Wisconsin linemen to do well in the NFL that it wouldn't be a reach?
Well, one, you did a mock draft and drafted 3 Wisconsin. What do you live in, Wisconsin, brother?
That's what I was wondering.
But
if you could draft Melvin Gordon all over again, you do that.
I mean, Tyler Biadasz is a great center prospect.
I trust these Wisconsin offensive linemen to do well in the NFL, because look at Bill Thomas. He came from Wisconsin, and look at how some of these Wisconsin offensive linemen do in the NFL.
Sure,
they're all pros and what's it called? All pros.
Absolutely. We'll let Rick respond here, Anthony.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, listen, you know what kind of pedigree you're getting with the Wisconsin offensive linemen. For many years, Iowa, Nebraska was like that for a long time. And, I actually think Tyler Biadasz from Wisconsin is a 1st-round pick, but we'll have to wait till next year because he is a redshirt sophomore. He did not declare for this year's draft. I know he did get a evaluation from the NFL Draft Advisory Board, but he did decide to return back to school. Boshin Swan-Nizel, or we'll just call him Big Bo. He was a little bit disappointing at the Senior Bowl. I wanted to see a little bit more from all the Wisconsin boys. Dieter, I think, will be a solid starter at the next level. And David Edwards is a guy who, based on his film 2 years ago, was probably a 1st-round pick if he came out last year. And then this year, apparently, after the season, he confided to the media that he played injured all year. So when you watch his film, you have to take that into consideration. I forget offhand what the exact injury was, but his film this year was not quite as good as his film 2 years ago. So that's something that NFL evaluators will have to weigh.
Yeah, and my backup center to draft is do you think Elton Jenkins from Mississippi State is a 1st-round pick, or do you think he's more of a early 2nd-round pick, early 2nd, late 2nd, early 3rd-round pick?
I don't know if any centers are going to sneak into the 1st round, but Elton Jenkins is about as safe as a pick as you're going to get in this year's draft. He's not going to go to the Pro Bowl, but he's going to step in, compete for a starting job from day 1, be a solid pro. He's going to get beat on occasion, struggle with some speed at times, but at the end of the day, he's a bulldog in the middle, and he's going to be a feisty guy. And Bradbury, I think, if anybody from NC State, might be the guy that sneaks into round 1. Some people like Dalton Reisner from Kansas State. He played tackle. Some people like him as a guard. Other people like him as a center. he's a guy I'm probably higher on. I don't think he's a first-round guy, but you tell me I can have a Dalton Risner on my team on day 2. I'm all for that.
And Rick, I'm not sure if is there any strong safeties, because we're going to be trading. The Dolphins specifically are going to be trading Rashad Jones. What strong safety do you recommend in the second or third round, maybe, to if we get a second, third round pick as well from the Raiders or someone like that to get to pair up with Mika Fitzpatrick and like a fourth round corner to pair up with Xavier Howard?
Well, I mean, the safety, there's going to be probably a run on safety somewhere. I'm guessing in the mid to late second round. I think there's a lot of safeties kind of evenly paired there. And 2 guys I'm looking at would probably be Taylor Rapp, who worked out at Washington yesterday. Ran, I think, 4.75 range, so probably not in the first round area, but right in that day 2 mix. A guy that doesn't have the prototypical size, but you talk about an in the box safety. Taylor Rapp is all over the field, playing with his hair on fire, right? I mean, people have underestimated this kid throughout his whole career. If you check into his background story. And I will not underestimate him as he transitions to the next level. Another guy I like is Darnell Savage out of Maryland, who, he could play nickel, he could play safety, had an outstanding combine that kind of catapulted him up into that top 50 range. And then, a fourth round cornerback, I'm going to give you a small school guy, Corey Ballentine out of Washburn. Go put his film on this guy. He's making interceptions. He's creating fumbles. He's tipping passes. He's physical. He's jamming receivers up at the line of scrimmage. And then he goes over to the Senior Bowl and proves he can cover the Power 5 conference guys.
And what's your opinion on Sheldrick Redwine from Miami, the strong safety from Miami?
Yeah, I thought he was a guy that I was impressed with his measurables. He had sneaky athleticism. You talk about his broad jump was close to like 11 feet. I think he had a 39-inch vert, and he ran right 4.62 40, I believe, offhand. Now you take that size speed combination at 6'1" and 200 and change. I think he's probably in that mid-round range. I got probably a 4th or 5th round grade on Sheldrick Redwine.
And do you think he would move to stay at strong safety, or do you think he has the athleticism to move to free safety?
Yeah, I could see him playing free safety. I think he has the athleticism to be a center fielder and be that guy. And again, the fine line between strong safety and free safety in the NFL is really blurring. So I think he does have the size and the athleticism to play either or.
All right, Anthony.
Okay, and one more.
What? One more.
Yeah, honestly, I find DK Metcalf a little bit overrated. I like his teammate from Mississippi State a little bit better, DeMarcus Lodge. I like him a little bit better than DK.
Yeah, I mean, DeMarcus is a 5-pound.
His hype overrates him a little bit. I know he's a first-round pick,
right?
And just because he's a top 10 pick, he's gonna be I'm scared he's gonna be a bust, to be honest, because he reminds me a little bit of Kevin White, and I forgot the other receiver. Oh, Corey Davis, to be honest, and that's what scares me with him, with all these measurables that he has.
Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the segment, so we appreciate you calling in. And DeMarcus Lodge is a guy highly recruited coming out of high school, 5-star recruit. Maybe got lost in the mix there with all the other wideouts. But the thing that bothered me about DeMarcus Lodge when I was at the East-West Shrine game, supposedly he was there. I just didn't see him out there making any plays. So that was the one thing that bothered me about DeMarcus Lodge.
All right, Anthony. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the call, man. Got Rick Serritella on the line, NFL Draft Bible. Again, that's just NFLDraftBible.com. You go right there. You get yourself. You got 3 weeks to get set, get primed, get prepped for the NFL Draft. 3 weeks from tomorrow night, Thursday night, April 25th. How long you been doing this, Rick?
My 18th year now, Mark. And probably my favorite year yet. So, the draft guide was something we haven't done since, the last one I did was in 2010. So almost a decade passed by since I've done a publication. It was a whole heck of a lot of fun, and really it was nice to remember how much data input goes involved in the process, all the hometowns and date of births, and then the 10-yard splits, the 20-yard splits. We got it all in there.
My goodness. Yeah, that's just massive stuff when you talk about how many prospects. Did you ever count how many guys you mention and talk about and give a scouting report to?
Yeah, I mean, so, right now I'm starting on the 2020 NFL draft. My wonderful wife and daughter are here bringing me some water.
Absolutely.
We start with the database of about 3,500 players. And then, in the draft guide, we did 415 scouting reports. We ranked about 1,000 of them. So I think at the end of the day, what we try to do is take those 3,500 guys, get it down to a solid 500, because, 250 are going to get drafted. And then a lot of people don't realize the undrafted free agency aspect of it. A third of every NFL team is consisted of undrafted free agents. There's more undrafted free agents in the league than there are all of day 3 picks combined. So for me, the team should be able to hit on their early round picks. It's the guys that can, make their money on day 3, make their money on the undrafted free agents. If you take a look at the 2 teams who played in the Super Bowl, they each had about 20 guys on each roster that were undrafted.
Rick, you're making me look bad when people ask me to break down the, Louisville offensive line, and I'm like, hey, well, hang on just a second. I'm trying to track like 65 to 70 teams, really 130. I can't do that. I know about, I don't know, 10 to 15 players per team, even at that level. But, the big teams, Alabama, I probably know 30 guys. I can't be expected to know all those guys. And then you're throwing out 3,500 players at us. Goodness.
Yeah, we're over here. We got the sickness mark. We're over here at the Princeton Pro Day. We're watching guys like Jesper Horsted and Steve Carlson running we got Matt Dennis out of Penn at the Pro Day scene. So it's crazy. I mean, the names, this Jake Carlock at a Long Island University, LIU post. I mean, these guys, they just pop onto the radar. They jump right onto your radar, right from the broad jump, right into your spreadsheet.
I guess so. My goodness. That's really grinding it down right there. Anybody in the live chat that did not receive a notification and you're a subscriber, please let me know, because there was something going on screwy with the notifications, and I set up this live stream about half hour to 40 minutes before we came on, but for some reason it wasn't the same live stream. And anyway, hopefully everybody's catching up and getting online with us. If you jump online late, as you are possibly right now, keep in mind that we've been on for about half hour to 35 minutes. What you do is you wait for this video to post to YouTube, and then you check it all out from the beginning, as we have already talked about running backs, wide receivers, and offensive line, and also a little bit more in depth on the Steelers and the Dolphins. So we got you all set up right there. We got Rick Serritella on the line from the NFL Draft Bible. And again, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We believe we deliver on a daily basis the best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football. So please check out the videos, and then hopefully you'll make the decision to subscribe to the channel and help build it up by grabbing a link in the description section. Yes, sir, Rick. What's that?
Don't even think about it. Just subscribe, like it,
lock it in.
Yeah,
take our word for it.
Get your helmet votes in. Get that Rutgers helmet up there. Let's go.
Rutgers. Rick's asking for Rutgers. Get the Rutgers votes in. And I let you people know that I'm not picky. If you want to vote 42 times, vote 42 times. It's a Chicago election. Vote as many times as you want. They all count. All right. Rick, let's go to defensive line. And I'm going to give you one letter. I'm throwing one letter, and I expect you to know what I'm talking about. Of course, you will. And you take it away from there. Q. This time last year, this guy was not really on the map. And this guy was so devastating this year in the SEC. My goodness, he just blew up play after play after play.
I remember when Carson Palmer was the #1 overall pick. I want to say it was the 2003 NFL draft. So now we're really dating ourselves how far back we've been going covering the draft. But I remember going into that season, for those college football fans who may not subscribe to the draft regularly, there's the Blesto and the National. These are the two major reports that, most NFL teams subscribe to one or the other. There's about 6 teams or so. I think the Patriots and the Cowboys and a couple others do their own thing and are independent. But I remember Carson Palmer was not even on the list. And then he went on to become the number 1 overall pick that year. That's the last time I've seen a guy ascend to the top of the draft. Quinnen Williams, I mean, this time last year, if you asked me who Quinnen Williams was, I wouldn't have known. There was no buzz around him coming into the season that I was aware of where he was going to be in the mix for potentially the number 1 overall pick. And now, the explosion, the quickness, the disruptiveness, the agility, the athleticism. I mean, this guy, there's not much he can't do. And, boy, he's just like the one-man gang. He's a wrecking crew there. He's going to be a backfield disruptor at the next level. I do think Kyler Murray's locked in at that number 1 pick, but San Francisco is going to have an interesting decision between Bosa and Q.
Get Rick Serritella on the line from the NFL Draft Bible as we carve through the defense now and get you set for the NFL Draft on April 25th. That is just 22 days away. Yeah, we talked about Ed Oliver the other day, and you seem to be extremely impressed, regardless of the fit, where somebody decides to play him, that it's just a simple matter of fact that the guy can play. You'll find a spot for him. You'll just let him go.
No, yeah, I think, this guy, he's a mismatch. I don't care if he plays inside where he's considered undersized. I don't care if he plays outside where he's maybe considered out of place. And heck, people want to criticize the Titans for viewing him as an outside linebacker. Well, you know what? Wade Phillips did it a few years back with Mario Williams. I think he could do it if he was asked to. He's a special talent. He's what I call a blue chip. And for me, he's a top 5 solid lock all day long. And honestly, for a long part of the season, while Bosa was injured and before Quinnen proved his consistency at the beginning of the season, the first part of the season, Ed Oliver was locked and loaded, number 1 prospect in the nation on my board. So, not much has changed. He didn't do anything to be the number 3 prospect on my board. It's just that, Quinnen Williams is so much more came out of nowhere and just is just more explosive. He's bigger, he's faster, he's stronger, he's just better a little bit, but the line is thin.
You mentioned explosion, and I think college football fans, Michigan ones in particular, expected to see more explosive plays out of Shawn Geary. He was an extremely good player. The Michigan defense, aside from going to Columbus and getting run around the field basically for 2 to 3 years, while he was there, was one of the best defenses in the country, certainly stingy against the run, and he really held up, but didn't really make game-changing kind of plays across the line of scrimmage.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the one head-scratching thing, right? Because, you expected so much more. And then, that to me, it was a little bit weird at the end of the season where, was it the injury? Was he holding himself out for the draft? He kind of was shielded from the media when that whole thing was going on. So I'm not quite sure what it was. It's pretty interesting to see where we've come in terms of perception, because I think if this was a decade ago and a player was coming out of the draft and starting his own agency and representing himself and having his own agent firm, I think it would be a big deal. It's kind of flown out under the radar here. I think it's an interesting tidbit in this year's draft where, this young man is coming out and as if dealing with the draft process wasn't big enough to have to handle, he's actually starting his own agency. I'm not sure if they're representing other clients, but this is a big step and maybe a trend of things to come. So I thought that was interesting. But in terms of his combine performance, it was historic. He's running faster than, half of the running backs out there. So when you talk about that kind of size and speed combination, again, he's a little bit in that Ed Oliver boat where does he have a true position at the next level? Some people view him inside, other people view him outside. it's going to be interesting to see what kind of scheme he gets drafted into.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love. For you, the hardcore college football fan, we got a Rick Serritella special tonight here talking NFL draft. We're just 22 days away. That's 3 weeks and 1 day, Thursday night through Saturday on that weekend in April. Let's go to the edge, Rick, with a ton of college football stars, guys that people are going to recognize. Of course, Nick Bosa is at the top of the list. He's a freak. Montez Sweat is a guy that I loved watching. I thought he was fun to watch, teaming up with Jeffrey Simmons on the inside, and they made certainly a havoc, a regular thing in the SEC week to week. Chase Winovich, I'll start with him. How does he project?
You know, I'm not a huge fan of Chase Winovich. I think what frustrates me watching Chase is his persistence to bull rush. Almost every play, he just wants to bull rush so often. I want to see him switch it up, develop more hand repertoire, develop a little bit more pass rush moves, because he's going to need that at the next level now. He got by on that at the college level, but I got to see a little bit more. So I'm not as high on Chase. To me, he's a day 3 guy. I get there are traits, there are some characteristics there to like. Montez Sweat, who you mentioned, this guy was straight out dominant at the Senior Bowl. Nobody could block Montez Sweat, and I think that performance alone had secured his stock into the top 10. Then he came out at the combine. I think he ran the 4.44 or something at 261, which is insane. But then we find out that there's this heart condition detected during the physical in Indianapolis that, you know, very similar to what happened to Maurice Hurst a couple years ago that kind of knocked him out of the first round. Now, he got called back for the medical recheck. He did get cleared, but that's something worth monitoring because I have him right now going, I believe, number 5 to the Tampa Bay Bucks, line him up opposite of JPP. That could be a good pass rush duo, but how much risk, how much concern our team's going to be about that heart. Even though the reports have said it's a minor thing, you never know until draft day. So he's a guy that could slide. And one other guy we haven't touched on, Brian Burns, Florida State. I mean, this guy, I think, has a chance to be a real special pass rusher. I love what he brings to the table. I think he's going to be an edge setter. I have him going to the Carolina Panthers in round 1. I think they're picking right in the middle of the round, and that would be a match made in heaven because Carolina is in desperate need of pass rush help, and Brian Burns could be of immediate assistance.
Talking NFL draft, the very best way that I know how. We got Rick Serritella on the line from the NFL Draft Bible. We've got him for about another 10 minutes or so. Want to let you know that we've got content coming your way, talking Ohio State, LSU, Florida State, Alabama, Miami, Tennessee, USC, and others here in the next couple of days. Got a conversation coming up tonight on LSU with Billy Gomilla from SB Nation and also Steve Hellwagon from Ohio State and Bucknuts on the 247 Sports platform. Cornerback, I'm going to get greedy here and try to get you to run down a lot of guys here, Rick. So we'll start with Mr. Williams.
Yeah, no, I love top cornerback in the draft for me. Obviously, LSU pedigree. They've become DBU there, and size, speed, man coverage ability, redshirt sophomore, so best football still ahead of him. I don't even know if he's 20 years old yet. A lot to like with Mr. Greedy Williams. Number 2 would be Byron Murphy. He worked out, did positional drills at his pro day yesterday, stood on his combine times. Not as tall. You know, Greedy Williams is 6'1" and change. Byron Murphy's probably 5'11", 5'10" and a half. So, you know, some people like him as a nickel. Some people like him outside. I think he has the ability to play either or. DeAndre Baker was a guy who at one point I had him ahead of Murphy. But then after talking to some people that I respect highly and understanding that maybe he's not as a hard of worker that, you know, coaches want him to be, maybe he's a little bit of a diva. And we saw that at his combine, you know, not testing what he should have because from what I understand, he didn't work as hard as he should have leading up to that. So I got a question, you know, how much does this kid really want it? Rock Ya-Sin from Temple This is a guy that has all the goods. He's going to be a solid starter for many years to come. Transfer from Presbyterian, came to Temple, earned a single-digit number, was very impressive. If you watch that game against Buffalo, he just completely took Anthony Johnson out of the game entirely. So I think Rock Ya-Sin is a guy who could sneak into the first round, as is Julian Love of Notre Dame. Fast, physical, size, speed. This kid is not being talked about like he should be. I think Julian Love's a first-round guy. Trayvon Mullen from Clemson, another, kind of similar to Greedy, where he has that size, speed. Maybe, somewhat of an underachiever college career because, there was a lot of hype on him coming out. And some people actually think, him and Chauncey Gardner could play free safety or cornerback. So Trayvon Mullen is a guy in the mix there, and, trying to run through as many as these names as we can.
I'd like to remind everyone that we're talking Miami football live at 8:30, and that's over on the Miami channel, Mark Rogers TV Miami, 8:30 Eastern time, talking Miami with Cam Underwood from State of the U, and that's right after I do some LSU recordings, so those are coming your way as well. We got Rick Serritella on the line, NFL Draft Bible. Safety, you mentioned Taylor Rapp. You love him. Plays with his hair on fire. So the kid from Washington, and he pretty much was on the map from the day he hit campus, was a player as a freshman, really good player. Where else do we see the safety position going?
Well, I'm a Deontay Thompson fan out of Alabama. I know he didn't get a chance to work out here during the draft process. He had the cast on the wrist over at the combine, but he's a lengthy corner, a guy that, could probably play strong safety or free safety. So there's some versatility there. I like what he brings to the table. Jonathan Abram is a guy that, people are high on that could, possibly be in the back end of the first round, maybe early day 2. I think he maybe had some nagging injuries this past season, but nothing too serious to be concerned about. And then here, I know you're somewhat in the area. I'm a Jersey guy. We got to get the Rutgers helmet up there, but Saquon Hampton out of Rutgers was very impressive at his pro day, had a very good combine performance. That final day of the combine, not everybody's there. A lot of the media goes home. Maybe not as many people are tuned in, but Saquon Hampton, I think, stated the case to possibly be a top 100 selection here. I love what he brings on the field, demeanor, his leadership, his ability. He had a young Rutgers defense, inexperienced defense, and I watched him play several occasions. He's constantly calling out pre-snaps read. He was the quarterback of that defense. He was making sure guys were lined up in the right area. And then Will Harris from Boston College, I had a chance to speak with him at length at the Senior Bowl. Again, 6'1", I want to say, 200 plus pounds, great size, great speed, but excellent intelligence. I mean, I could talk football with him all day long. You could tell he sticks his nose in the playbook. He's a student of the game. He bleeds and is very passionate about the game of football.
Got our guy, Dennis Wilson, big Miami fan, joins us on a regular basis asking about Jaquan Johnson.
Yeah, the safety, a little undersized, but I like his film. I think he came in at like 186, under 190 pounds. That's a tough go at the NFL. That's a red shirt, get with the NFL strength and conditioning program. Let's pack on 10 or 15 pounds and see what we have from there.
All right, Rick Serritella, NFL Draft Bible. I encourage you to check it out. I have many, many, many times. NFLDraftBible.com. Follow him on Twitter. Also, it's easy to remember at NFL Draft Bible on Twitter. Follow Rick's work there. You got to get yourself locked in for the NFL Draft in just 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks. Rick, we appreciate you stopping by. It's always a good time. Maybe if I get lucky, I know you're slammed this time of year, but maybe if I get lucky, I can track you down another time or two.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, we'll definitely do it again. We'll be back talking NFL draft. And hey, man, trying to keep up with you. You're on that can't stop, won't stop formula as well. So I appreciate tuning into the channel. I'm a subscriber, so I love when I get the new notifications, alerts, new videos. Hey, click it, like it, subscribe it, share it. Let's get that Rutgers helmet up there. Let's go, Jersey. Get it up.
You know what? Too many more of these promos, and you're going to get a free Rutgers. You won't have to make a vote. I'll splurge for it. Or maybe we should wait for the next Big Ten win. Win a game in the Big Ten, you get a helmet.
I'm going to have a lot more gray hairs when that happens.
Rick, it's been great, man. You're the best. Love it.
Thank
you so much giving us your time. And again, your Christmas day is only 22 days away, and we'll see you hopefully a few times before that.
No doubt about it. Appreciate you, Mark.
Thanks, Rick.
Cool.
Everybody else, so the deal is that at 8:30 Eastern time, just a half hour from now, go over to the Miami channel. We're talking Miami football with Cam Underwood from State of the U. In the meantime, I'm going to be off the air, but still working hard for you, talking LSU football with SB Nation. And then at 9:30, again, not live, but I've got a recording date with Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts talking Ohio State football. Just here in the last couple days, we have loaded up on Ohio State, Florida State, Miami, Florida, Clemson, Tennessee's coming your way, Alabama, LSU, more and more and more and more and more. Call me crazy, but just last night I thought, I've got enough Florida State material, enough Florida State contributors and guests, and enough to say about a school that should be coming back from 5-7 here very soon to establish a Florida State channel. Mark Rogers TV, Florida State, it's there. Look it up. If you act fast enough, you will be subscriber number 1. Because again, I've just in the last few days, in addition to James Coleman, which we see here on a regular basis, and James does big game. James Coleman, 36, does an outstanding job breaking down the Noles, but I've been able to come in contact and track down a few more Florida State contributors. So I thought, hey, this is the next fan base that we would like to serve here. So we're going to be talking a ton of Florida State football as well. And again, see all those teams back there. We have covered a ton of these teams just in the last few days, and those spring reports are coming your way. 8:30 Eastern time on the Miami channel. And you're going to see every 3 to 6 hours, about 4 times a day, videos coming out here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I know that everybody watching right now, you guys are locked in. I'm preaching to the choir. But if you have any family and friends out there that love college football, any social media acquaintances, people that you don't know except for to shoot them a line online, let them know we're here. And otherwise, I will see you guys in a half hour. Mark Rogers TV Miami, and we'll do it all over again, but this time talking nothing but Miami with Cam Underwood from State of the U. You guys are the best. We will see you very, very soon.